A very long time ago, in the heart of Lagos, lived a man named Nnamdi. Nnamdi was the kind of man that turned heads wherever he went. Tall, dark, and incredibly handsome, he carried himself with the effortless confidence of a man who knew his worth. He was wealthy, obscenely so, and he never had to work hard for a woman's attention. In fact, they practically threw themselves at him, drawn by his expensive cars, designer suits, and the irresistible charm in his deep voice. To Nnamdi, women were nothing more than conquests. He didn't believe in love. He didn't believe in commitment. To him, emotions were weaknesses, things that lesser men got entangled in. He preferred the thrill of the chase, the excitement of a new woman in his bed every night. At 45, Nnamdi decided it was time to finally settle down. He had all the wealth he could ever need, but something felt missing. He had no wife, no family, but there was one problem. He didn't trust city women. To him, they were too exposed, independent, and bold for his liking. He wanted a woman who would be loyal, timid, respectful, and untouched. A virgin raised with deep cultural values. He wanted a village girl who would worship him as her king and never question his authority. So, he called his mother one morning. "Mama," he said, "I am ready for marriage. But I don't want these city girls. I need a good, humble village girl, someone raised with proper values. Find me one." His mother, delighted that her son had finally come to his senses, and within weeks, she found the perfect candidate. Amarachi, a 20-year-old girl from a humble background, known for her obedience, beauty, and modesty. Nnamdi was pleased. The moment he saw her, he knew she was exactly what he wanted. Innocent, soft-spoken, and untouched by the modern world. A woman he could mold to his liking. Without wasting time, he began the marriage preparations, convinced that he had finally found the perfect wife. After their marriage, Nnamdi and Amarachi lived happily, surprisingly stopped his womanizing, and became a very loving, helpful, and providing husband. Every day, he goes to work and comes back very early to his beautiful wife, and in turn Amarachi played her part well as a good wife. 1 year into their marriage, Nnamdi and Amarachi had built a home filled with love, peace, and understanding. Then Amarachi became pregnant, which made Nnamdi very happy. Few months down the line, Amarachi gave birth to a baby boy. The baby's arrival brought more joy and happiness to their family. But something changed. At first, it was subtle. Late-night meetings, unanswered calls, secret whispers on the phone. Amarachi, who had once lived in pure bliss, felt a shift in her husband's behavior. Then, one night, he didn't come home. 2 days after he came home, very late. It was past 2 a.m. when Amarachi heard the sound of his car pulling into the driveway. She had been waiting in the sitting room, her hands shaking as she watched the door open. Nnamdi strolled in casually, his shirt unbuttoned, the scent of cheap perfume lingering in the air. He didn't expect to see her awake. "Nnamdi, where are you coming from?" she asked, her voice firm but not raised. He scoffed, pulling off his wristwatch. "Ah, Amarachi, don't start this nonsense. I'm coming from work." "Work? At 2 a.m.? Her eyes searched his face, looking for any trace of the man she once knew. "You're lying to me." Nnamdi stopped, then slowly turned to face her, his expression darkened. "And if I am?" His voice was laced with arrogance. Tears welled in Amarachi's eyes. "Nnamdi, you're cheating on me, aren't you?" His lips curled into a smirk. "And if I am, what will you do?" The question shook her to the core, not because of what he said, but because of how confidently he said it. Then he walked away. Days turned into weeks, and Nnamdi grew worse. He stopped hiding his affairs, coming home whenever he pleased, smelling of alcohol and other women. One night, she finally gathered the courage to confront him properly. Amarachi asked, "Nnamdi, is this what our marriage has become? You stay out late, sleep with other women, and come home like nothing happened? And what do you want me to do about it? Stop? Because of you?" He scoffed, pouring himself a glass of whiskey. "You swore to love me, to be faithful. What happened to that man I married?" Nnamdi chuckles darkly. "That man was a fool. Look at me now. I am rich, powerful, Do you think I can stay loyal to just one woman? I can have any woman I want. Tears streamed down Amarachi's face. Nnamdi, please, for our son, for our family. Nnamdi took a slow sip of his drink and stared at her coldly. If you don't like it, leave. Her breath caught in her throat. What? He leaned forward, his eyes mocking. I said leave. Go back to your father's house. Go back to poverty. Do you think you'd survive? Who will take care of you? You think any man will marry you after having my child? You belong to me, Amarachi. And if you ever complain again, I will divorce you and send you back to where I picked you from. Amarachi's knees gave way and she fell to the ground, sobbing. Nnamdi, please. Her voice broke as she crawled toward him, grabbing his feet in desperation. Don't do this to me. Don't throw me away. Nnamdi smiled a cruel, satisfied smile. He loved this. This was what he wanted. Her begging, her kneeling, her worshipping him like a god. He lifted her chin with his fingers, looking down at her with dominance. Good girl. Now wipe your tears and go to bed. And next time, don't question me again. She never questioned his late nights again. She never asked him about the women he slept with. She never confronted him no matter how much it hurt. Because she knew the answer would always be the same. If you don't like it, leave. And she couldn't leave. Her family would disown her for getting divorced. Her tradition forbade her from leaving her husband, and worst of all, she was nothing without him. Nnamdi made sure of that. After months of enduring Nnamdi's infidelities, arrogance, and threats, Amarachi came to a painful realization. She couldn't change him. No amount of tears, begging, or prayers could make her husband return to the man he used to be. But she also knew one thing. She was never going to allow herself to be thrown away like trash. So she made a decision. If she couldn't stop him, she would rather support him. One morning, as Nnamdi was getting ready for work, he was buttoning his shirt when Amarachi walked in with a small white bag in her hand. She had a sweet smile on her face, the kind that made it seem like nothing was wrong in the marriage. My love, she said softly. Nnamdi, half distracted, barely looked at her. What is it, Amarachi? She took a step closer, placed the bag on the table beside him and gently pushed it toward him. Here, take this. Finally, Nnamdi glanced at the bag, opened it, and froze. Inside, neatly arranged were packs of condoms, his brows furrowed. What is this? Amarachi let out a small chuckle, acting completely normal. They are protections, my love. You know, for your late nights. I don't want any of those girls to trap you with a disease or a child. You're a powerful man, and you need to be careful. Please just manage them. For a long time, Nnamdi was speechless. He stared at the condoms, then at his wife, who stood there with the calmest smile he had ever seen on her face. This was a trap. It had to be. He searched her face for signs of anger, jealousy, or even sarcasm. Nothing. She looked genuinely happy. That night, when he returned home late again, he expected a confrontation, but instead, Amarachi greeted him with a warm hug and a kiss on the cheek. Welcome home, my love, she whispered. Have you eaten? Should I serve you something? Nnamdi narrowed his eyes. Who was this woman? Where was the Amarachi who used to cry and beg him to stop cheating? For the next 3 weeks, she continued this new act. Every morning, she handed him a fresh pack of condoms with a sweet smile. Every night, she welcomed him without a single complaint. She even went further. She bought him perfumes, new designer shirts, and expensive wristwatches, encouraging him to look his best for the ladies. At first, it deeply unsettled him. It felt like he was losing control. What was happening? Why was she not angry anymore? But then, as the days passed, a new feeling took over, power. He loved it. He loved that his wife had accepted her place. He loved that she no longer nagged or complained. He loved that she now worshipped him willingly, not out of fear, but out of choice, or so he believed. As the months rolled on, Amarachi's acts of loyalty only increased. She helped him pick outfits for his business trips. She sent him messages at night, asking if he was having fun. She even joked about his adventures, laughing as though she was completely at peace with it. To Nnamdi, this was paradise. He had everything: a faithful, submissive wife at home and as many women as he wanted outside. He felt like a god. He started feeling untouchable. I have finally broken her, he thought proudly. She knows I am the king. One evening, while Amarachi was setting the dinner table, Nnamdi walked in from work. Feeling unusually generous, he approached her from behind and wrapped his arms around her waist, whispering into her ear, "You are such a good woman, Amarachi. Not every wife can accept a husband like me. You have made me so proud." Amarachi smiled, turning around to face him. She placed a gentle hand on his cheek and spoke in a voice so calm it sent chills down his spine. "Of course, my king. Why would I fight what I cannot stop? A wise woman knows when to surrender." There was something about her words, something about the way she said them, that made Nnamdi pause for a split second. But he quickly brushed it off. He was in control. She had accepted her fate. The next after work, Nnamdi sat back in the VIP lounge of an exclusive nightclub, a glass of whiskey in his hand and a smug grin on his face. He was in his element, wealthy, powerful, and completely untouchable. Across from him sat his longtime friend and business partner, Chuka, a man just as rich but far more cautious. The club's music pulsed in the background, but Nnamdi wasn't even paying attention. He was too busy boasting about his perfect marriage. Nnamdi chuckled, swirling his drink before taking a slow sip. "My brother, I swear, I am the luckiest man alive." Chuka raised an eyebrow, already knowing where this conversation was going. "Oh? And what's making you feel like a king tonight?" Nnamdi leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial tone. "My wife, Amarachi, she is unlike any other woman I have ever met." Chuka smirked, taking a sip of his own drink. "Ah, so you're finally realizing you married a good woman." Nnamdi burst into laughter, shaking his head. "Not just good, my brother. Perfect. Do you know that while other men's wives cry, fight, and nag over cheating, mine actually encourages it?" Chuka's smirk disappeared. He leaned forward slightly. "Encourages it?" "Yes." Nnamdi laughed again, slapping the table lightly. "Every morning, she hands me a pack of condoms before I leave for work. Can you imagine?" Chuka's eyes narrowed. "She does what?" "I swear. She tells me to manage it, so no woman traps me with pregnancy. She even picks out my outfits, buys me expensive colognes, and asks if I'm enjoying myself whenever I'm away." Chuka set his glass down, his face suddenly serious. "Nnamdi, this is not normal." Nnamdi waved a dismissive hand. Why do you sound like my mother? My wife is smart. She knows her place. She understands that I am a man, a king, and that no matter what I do outside, she is still the queen of my home." Chuka shook his head slowly. "No, my brother, a complaining wife is better than a silent one." Nnamdi frowned slightly, annoyed by Chuka's serious tone. "What are you saying?" Chuka leaned in, his voice lower, firmer. "Listen to me. A woman who complains still cares. A woman who fights still hopes things will change. But a woman who stays silent, who smiles at things she should be angry about, who even supports your bad behavior." He exhaled deeply. "That one is dangerous." Nnamdi scoffed, shaking his head. "You don't know Amarachi. She is afraid of divorce. She knows she has no life without me. Where will she go? Back to the village? Ha! Never." Chuka's face remained serious. "That's what you think. But let me tell you something. Every silent woman has a plan. She is either preparing to leave you, disgrace you, or destroy you. And you're too blind to see it." Nnamdi chuckled, rolling his eyes. "Chuka, I beg, forget that nonsense. You don't know how to control a woman. See, I broke Amarachi completely. She has accepted her fate. She will never leave me." Chuka shook his head again, looking at his friend with something close to pity. "You think you broke her?" He sighed deeply, then muttered under his breath, "Or did she just learn how to play the game better than you?" Nnamdi chuckled again, gulping the last of his whiskey. Omo, you worry too much. Amarachi is not a city girl. She doesn't have that boldness to plan anything. She is soft, submissive. She can never think of harming me. Chuka leaned forward, his eyes sharp. You see that confidence? That's what will destroy you. Nnamdi waved his hand dismissively. Nothing can destroy me, my brother. I am in control. Chuka sighed and leaned back, studying Nnamdi for a long moment. Then he gave a small smirk and lifted his drink. Okay, my friend, continue. But remember this night when the unexpected happens. Nnamdi laughed, raising his own glass. Nothing unexpected will happen. I am untouchable. But deep down, in the dark corners of his mind, Chuka's words left an unsettling feeling. He ignored it. After all, what could Amarachi possibly do? Nnamdi had always felt invincible, untouchable, unbreakable. But one day, everything changed. It started as a simple headache, nothing serious. He ignored it, assuming it was stress or lack of sleep from his endless nights of pleasure. But then, the pain became unbearable. His once powerful body began to weaken. His skin grew pale and his once mighty legs trembled beneath him. At first, he waved it off. Just malaria, I will be fine. But it didn't get better. Days turned into weeks. The pain increased. His appetite disappeared. His once muscular frame became frail. He visited the best hospitals. Doctors ran tests. No one could explain what was wrong with him. Sir, we have checked everything, but we cannot find the cause of your illness. It didn't make sense. How could a man who once ruled over women like a god now be confined to a sickbed? And then, one by one, all the women who once chased him began to disappear. The slay queens stopped calling. The young girls who once worshipped him ignored his messages. Even the married women he had affairs with avoided him. Only one person remained, Amarachi. Nnamdi lay on his sickbed, weak and helpless. And every single day, Amarachi was by his side. She cleaned his body. She cooked his favorite meals, even though he barely ate. She sat beside him at night, whispering prayers while he groaned in pain. She prepared native herbs and local remedies, feeding him with tender hands and a gentle smile. She never complained, never reminded him of his past sins. She was the perfect, loving wife. One evening, as Nnamdi lay weakly on the bed, he looked at Amarachi, who was carefully rubbing his feet with warm oil. His voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. Amarachi, why? She turned to him, confused. Why what, my love? Why are you still here? His eyes filled with pain, not just from his sickness, but from deep regret. I treated you terribly. I embarrassed you. I made you suffer. Why are you still taking care of me? Amarachi gave him a small, sad smile. She reached for his hand, gently squeezing it. Because I am your wife, Nnamdi. I made a vow to be with you in sickness and in health. Tears formed in Nnamdi's eyes. But all those women, none of them came back. Only you. Amarachi chuckled softly, dipping a cloth in warm water and wiping his forehead. They were never yours, my husband. You thought you ruled over them, but you are only a visitor in their lives. I am your home. Nnamdi blinked, his vision blurry. For the first time in years, he truly saw Amarachi, the woman he humiliated, the woman he cheated on, the woman he once thought was beneath him. And yet, here she was, his only true companion. Amarachi, I'm sorry. She smiled again, but this time, there was something unreadable in her eyes. I know, my love. I know. That night, Nnamdi struggled to breathe. His chest rose and fell in shallow movements. He knew it was time. Amarachi sat beside him, her hand resting on his weak fingers. Do you want me to pray for you? She whispered, his eyes filled with fear. For the first time, he feared death. He nodded. She closed her eyes, whispering softly, May the gods of justice grant you peace. Nnamdi's eyes widened. Something about her words sent a chill down his spine. He opened his mouth to speak, but before he could say another word, his body went still. The mighty Nnamdi, the once proud womanizer who thought he could never fall, was gone. And as Amarachi sat beside his lifeless body, she let out a small, knowing smile. Rest well, my husband. You fought hard, but in the end, you were never truly in control. A month after Nnamdi's funeral, his mansion, once filled with sorrow and mourning, transformed into something entirely different. The grieving widow, Amarachi, who had once been the picture of devotion and loyalty, was now a completely different woman. She stopped wearing her mourning dress even when their culture says a woman must at least mourn her husband for 1 year. No more quiet prayers, no more tears. She was free. Nnamdi had left everything to her. The mansion, the businesses, the bank accounts overflowing with wealth. And Amarachi wasted no time enjoying it. She traveled to the best countries, spent lavishly on designer clothes, and threw wild parties with men who had no idea about her past. She would check into luxury hotels with young, muscular men, showering them with money, drinking expensive champagne, and laughing like a woman who had never known suffering. And the one man who noticed something was off was Chuka. Chuka had never trusted Amarachi. From the day Nnamdi told him that his wife no longer complained about his cheating, he had sensed something wasn't right. And now, watching her waste millions on random men, laughing without a care in the world, Chuka knew something was wrong. Besides, he warned his friend who didn't listen. The worst part was, no evidence, no trace. Amarachi had spent 3 years poisoning Nnamdi after she realized she couldn't do anything about his deeds. Though not enough to kill him quickly. That would be suspicious. Instead, she used slow-acting toxins, mixing them into his food little by little, just enough to make him weak, sick, but never enough to alarm the doctors. It started with small doses. Then, as time went on, she increased the strength. By the time he realized he was dying, it was already too late. Even on his sickbed, as she prepared his native drugs every day, she played her role perfectly. She cooked his meals, gave him herbs, sat beside him and prayed for him. She cried at night, held his hand, and whispered soft words while she watched him wither away. She laughed softly, shaking her head. One morning, as she sat and reflected on the past, he thought he was untouchable, that he could cheat, insult me, and threaten me with divorce, that he could throw me away like a used rag. I wasn't going anywhere, not without his wealth. And now, she gestured around her, I have everything. Guys, what do you think about her actions? Did Nnamdi really deserve death? What would you have done if you were to be Amarachi? Drop your comments in the comment section. Let's talk. And please don't forget to like, subscribe to African Tales by Chinua. Thank you.